Greetings and welcome to another edition of The Pedal Shift Project. The Pedal Shift Project is a series of conversations, thoughts, and experiments on bicycle travel adventures. From tips and tricks to ideas on how to ride your ride, let's shrink the world by bike. Show notes and more are available at pedalshift.net/409, and you can email the show at pedalshift@pedalshift.net or text me at 202-930-1109 and check Pedal Shift out on all the socials as well. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 409th edition of the Pedal Shift Project. My name's Tim Mooney. Thanks so much for joining. On this edition, Part 7, the finale of the Lake Ontario 2025 adventure. What was supposed to be a triumphant border crossing and final push from Niagara Falls back to the starting point became something entirely different when family health concerns required an immediate pivot. But sometimes the best laid plans need to be set aside for what actually matters, and Day 6 became about completing the ride in the way it was always meant to end, with a proper beginning and a proper finish, both by bike, both connected to the places and people that made this whole adventure meaningful in the first place. Good afternoon. From Day 6 from Webster, New York. This day was supposed to be a Niagara Falls, a border crossing, and then finishing off where I'm at right now in Webster, New York. If you were tuned into the end of the episode last week, what went down, we had a little bit of a health, we'll call it a scare, we'll call it an incident, but everything was fine, everything turned out fine. But what did it mean? Today on Day 6, I drove across the border and I drove all the way from Niagara Falls to here, which of course was not the way it was supposed to be, but I talked about last episode, actually all of this was meant to be. So what am I going to do today on Day 6? I am going to do the thing that I wanted to do all the way back in Part 1, which is to start from here at my soon-to-be former home of my mother, and ride the several miles to her new home, go for a visit, and then turn around and cycle back so that I end up creating the scenario where I am biking away from this place like I was supposed to on Day 1 and biking to this place as I was supposed to here on Day 6. So that is what's going to end up happening. And I'm super excited for it because I've never done this. There is a beautiful trail that goes along New York State Route 104. There's also the route that goes along Lake Road, so I may make this a loop. I haven't looked at the map at all to figure this out because obviously this isn't what was planned, but we're just going to wing it, I think. It is a glorious day for those of you who like sun and who like temperatures around 70 degrees Fahrenheit, because that's precisely what it is. The lake is nice and a little bit choppy, but not wavy, for lack of a better way of putting it. It's so nice to be able to see the water again as openly like this, because I didn't have that so much of the lake the last day or so, because it was much more about the Niagara River. And of course, Niagara Falls. Now I get to come back to where it all began. And I just want to say at the outset here, as I was coming in here and just driving across the bridge that sort of connects everything up and that brought me back here, it was just fitting. It's like I realized, oh, I just did the full loop of the lake, the thing that was the goal, the thing that I wanted to do, the sort of hat tip to my dad. I'm literally in the room where he spent his last days, and it feels like that this is a good fitting hat tip towards him and towards the reason why we did this ride. I like that. And I like that this final part is going to be exactly the way it was supposed to be, just rotated 180 degrees and a little off kilter, as so many of my bike trips and bike adventures end up being. Why would it be any different? All right. More to come as we start the beginning of the end here on Day 6. And we are off here on Lake Road. And I have no battery worries, like at all. So I'm in 3 right now, which again is a reminder that's 30% of the possible output is the levels. Okay, had somebody who was coming up in the lane here. Yeah, this is what was supposed to be happening. 6 days ago. It was a lot colder then. I am in short sleeves right now and working my way towards Irondequoit Bay and Bay Road. So this is a little bit of road riding. This is along the lakeshore route basically right here, but I'm going the opposite direction. I'm now going towards Niagara Falls right now, but that will only be very briefly because I'm about to go south away from the lake. And away we go. This is the Seaway Trail, and these signs may be older than me. But yeah, so I'll be taking this up, and then I think I'm going to be taking a route, it might be Clem Road, if memory serves. And then I will, that'll be going for a while. It's about a 5 or so mile ride, so really not that big of a deal. The other thing that happened in this little interregnum here is the sun went behind some clouds, and it is so much more comfortable for me. That direct sun, I am a broken record, but that just does not feel as good for me. Despite the fact that I'm using the battery here, or the e-bike mode, I'm still doing some work for sure. The e-assist definitely requires you to be pedaling to get the e-assist. It's not like this is a work-free thing. Now, I certainly have the ability to hit the throttle, which interestingly I have not done at all this entire trip, even though I probably pretty easily could have. Just gonna check on the routing here. There we go, yeah. I was right, I'll be making a left on Clem Road. Yes, that sounds as bad as you think it does. It's not Phlegm, it's Clem, which I'm sure is somebody's name, and I should never make fun of them, but I have made fun of the name of this road largely my entire life. It is a strange name. We have many strange names here. We have many cool names that are often from the Iroquois language. And it looks like I've got something behind me with... Oh, that might be a bus. That might be a bus. But I think I'm okay. I'm going to move over into the left lane as I make this turn. Yeah, I'm so used to doing this as a drive, I'm realizing how nice it is to be able to do this as a bike ride, because it is a pretty well set up bike route. Very large, Clem Road in particular. This is an enormous shoulder, enormous. I'm getting a, oh, it must be, it's my handlebar bag that seems to be making that noise. Something is making a noise. So this is the town of Webster. This is not where I grew up. This is where my parents moved about 25, 26 years ago when they came back from California. This is also the town where my dad worked for his entire career when living in the Rochester area. It certainly held a very important part in my life. I worked for the same company for 2 summers as an intern. So yeah, it's a fascinating little place. And of course, with the lake here, it's just absolutely beautiful. Winters, winters are something else. I think I've said it before on the pod, and I certainly say it to others. The wind blows right in this town. You could get 2 feet of snow, and we certainly did this past winter. So, I'm curious what speed I'm going. It feels fast. Yeah, I'm going 21 miles per hour. And this is actually a really interesting and good matrix? I don't know. Good metric, maybe that's what I was looking for. It's halfway in between, of kind of how things would go on this type of surface. And to, again, average somewhere around 20 miles per hour really is, I think, the magic spot for this kind of riding. Now, I'm carrying one bag, one pannier, and not a lot of weight. So I think it'll be very interesting to see the fully loaded version of this. Already just like little things like the teeny tiny little dips in a rolling hill situation. This just really flattens that all out. I'm getting a good indicator based on all the cycling that I did over the past just shy of a week here, how it would have been. And I think, as I had mentioned a few weeks ago for you, a few days ago for me, my confidence in the bike is back to where it was before. I think there's still question marks, but I'll say a couple of things. First, I'm less sure if I need to raise these handlebars. I think now that I've gotten the saddle on here that's more comfortable, I think that's sort of evened things out for me a little bit. So I may not do that, and that also is a far less work that I've got to do. I did purchase and have one being shipped a saddle that looks similar to a Brooks, except it's got springs in it. Brooks does make a version of that, but this was substantially cheaper. So we're going to go with that for this bike and just see how it goes. The saddle that I'm using right now, I'm very excited to put back on the Brompton because that's where it belongs. But it is interesting now, if that saddle is something that I like, even and it's not very broken in state, I wonder if I'm going to end up buying another one for the Safari, as my next big trip this summer is definitely going to be using the Safari. At least I think it will be. And yeah, now of course the difference there is the Safari's profile is a little bit lower than this, although I have raised the handlebar a bit. So that'll be an open question when I start turning my attention to that ride, which is, as I'm riding here right now, only in a few weeks. So by the time you're listening to this, I will have absolutely finished that ride. So I'm getting all of my podcast content for the year in within a month and a half, it feels like. So that's funny. In a few minutes here, we're going to be, actually more like a few seconds, I'm going to be getting on a trail for the first time that I've ever ridden it. It's the Hojack Trail, Hojack. That'll give a cool name. It seems like a cool name for a trail. But that will connect me through Webster. And this one's not unlike the Canal Towpath surface. And I already see the sign for it. Used very often by locals for walks with dogs and whatnot. It's certainly used for cycling too. But I believe in the winters it's a snowmobiling trail, which I think is cool. And here we are. Oh, interesting. It starts off dirt. Oh, it looks like it's a dirt trail, which is fine. I've certainly got the tires for it. I'm going to downshift a little bit here. Yeah, it's a very firmly packed dirt. It does appear that there might be some limestone in it, but it's very limited. Very limited. But it is very flat. Not any ruts or anything like that, which is actually surprising. I wonder if its use as a snowmobile trail helps that. In the winter, it just compacts things down even more. But it looks like it's a little soft in spots. I think it's dried out a bit from all of the really substantial rains. Oh, except for this spot. That's almost C&O bad right there. I realize I don't have any fenders of any kind on this. I bought some mountain bike. Calling them fenders is probably overstating it. It's really mud guards. And I figured that I would put them on if it was required for the rain during the days that I was expecting rain. And since it wasn't raining that first day, didn't put them on. And when the Wednesday in Toronto, it really wasn't raining all that bad either, so I didn't put them on. But so far it doesn't seem like I really need it. These tires have probably a unique amalgam of grit in them, from the sands of Toronto Island to some of the dirt, the agricultural dirt of Wolfe Island, and now the mud of the Hojack Trail here in Webster. Oh wow, it's really sloppy here. Boy, oh boy. Yeah, this is bad right here. This is worse than any C&O setup I've ever had. There we go. Got through it. Yeah, I think I'm gonna skip taking this back. And it's not terrible, it's only for a short period of time, but it's sloppy. And it looks like they are turning. And so I can continue through. Here, this goes diagonally, not a pure north-south, but it crosses many of the east-west roads here in the town of Webster. I believe I've talked about this before, but New York has some interesting dynamics when it comes to municipal structures. We're in the state of New York, the county of Monroe, and then within counties in New York, they're all made up of towns. And within towns, you will often have villages. Confusingly, the towns and villages will sometimes have the same name and sometimes not. This is an example of sometimes they do. It's the town of Webster, and where my mom is the village of Webster. I grew up in the town of Parenton, and our village in Parenton is Fairport. Back in the day, and I've talked about this for sure during the Erie Canal trip, you would never say that you lived in Parenton. You would always say you lived in Fairport. Our high school, even though it covers the whole town of Parenton, you went to Fairport High School, and it was not in the village of Fairport. So, confusing. Nowadays, after getting done telling you for years, nobody says they live in Parenton, I have noticed people now say they live in Parenton when they, in fact, live in the town of Parenton and not the village of Fairport. Very interesting how times change. A correction to the record of past podcasts, I will say. I've got about another 1.25 miles here on the Hojack Trail, and this spits me basically right into the village of Webster, whereas now I'm in the town of Webster. Did you get all that? Just be glad that I didn't end up going to Love Canal like I threatened. Then you would have gotten the entire history of Superfund while I was biking around Love Canal. Oh, and if you think you're getting away with this, I am absolutely going back. And you are 1,000% going to get the history of hazardous cleanups in the United States and the advent of the Superfund laws, since that was my bag for a few years and I went to law school for it. All right, I think I'm going to stop punishing you as we continue on this, and we will rejoin again as we get a little bit closer to the village of Webster while we are here in the town. Get all that? All right, just about to North Avenue, or New York State Route 250, which if you go south, takes you all the way down to Fairport and pick it up there. 250 is not awesome for cycling, but it's also not terrible. I've certainly ridden worse. I just don't know how many people would expect bicycles. That would be my one question mark. I'm going underneath Route 104. You may recall 104, major thoroughfare. We're on 104A for a minute. And we are in the village of Webster. Now, for privacy reasons, of course, I'm not going to mention specifically where we're at, but suffice to say, we're in the village. And we will be taking a little bit of a break so I can say hello to my mother. And then when we next join up, you and me, we're going to take a different route back to the lake, back to the finish line, and wrap up day 6, wrap up the trip, wrap up the vibes. So we'll see you in a whoosh of a moment. We have just completed our familial visit. All is good, all things considered. And now we are going to resume our ride. There we go. And we're going to take a different route back. Make sure I got everything. I do. Yeah, it's delightful to be able to bike here. And finding our way back to Route 250. And instead of taking a route that includes the Hojack Trail, we are instead going to take the Route 104 trail, which parallels how I drove. Now I can't even remember. No, we ended up seeing Ganey, didn't we? So we went up 250 and then to Lake, didn't we? No, this is brand new to you. I am in assist 1. Let's pump that up to 2. We'll do sidewalks since I got to stay on this side of the road anyways. Yeah, I typically, when there's bike infrastructure like there is here, I would take it, but I also don't want to go contraflow to the bike path. So I will do the sidewalk, and they're going to let me. Thank you. And I got a little walkie guy here, so I can cross there as the exit ramp there for 104. And now we'll take the bike route. We'll be going by North Ponds Park, which is one of the several excellent parks that we've got here in the village and town of Webster. Because this is a freeze and thaw kind of place, these paved paths are a little patchy, shall we say. But they're pretty excellent. And this actually I can take all the way back to the road that leads. So this goes basically almost all the way to the bay, which is pretty great. And then we can take that, go north up to the lake, and that will complete our bike adventure. So a little bit of a strange way to end things for kind of a strange tour, strange bike adventure. Yeah, I guess this is another good reason why I expanded the notion of this program away from classic bike touring to encompass all different types of bike adventures. Because I found I was doing lots of different things with bikes and ended up stumbling on it. I think there's many people who would eschew e-bikes as a bike touring modality. I don't, but that's why, again, I went to bike adventures, because I like utilizing bikes for all different types of things, and this is certainly one of them. When you realize what is within easy bicycling distance, it really does, as I often say, shrinks the world. You realize things are much closer than they actually seem to be when you're used to doing it by motor vehicle. And when I'm in this area, because I grew up here and my mentality is often all motor vehicle, I sometimes forget, hey, biking is just as good, if not better. And this is absolutely a great example of it. So this is North Ponds Park here. And you could probably hear the traffic of New York 104 on my left shoulder. Big grassy areas, tons of geese are out. It's geese season, as we talked about. Definitely a recreational path, but depending on what your situation is, definitely could be a commuter route. Again, depending on what your situation is. One of the things about this park is there's the kind of the fitness trails where there's different stations where you stretch and do things. But just like Toronto Island from the other day, there's a big disc golf course here as well. I never did that. I think one of these days I'm going to have to try it out, because I have a Office of the Vice President of the United States. I'll call it a Frisbee, but it's a disc, because I'm not sure if it's a Frisbee brand, but I have one. A friend of mine used to work in the Office of the Vice President. different vice president. But yeah, I think I could use that. It also happens to be the only Frisbee, quote unquote, that I have. So we are about to cross another one of the major roads. This is Holt Road. Now, interesting, as once the house is sold, which is imminent, the hotel that I will tend to stay at is just over here. And seeing how comically close it is to my mom's new residence, I absolutely should bring my bike for good weather when I'm driving, because who needs to drive to there when you've got literally a bike path that takes you almost literally door to door, which is pretty great. Yeah, it's so funny because, again, I'm used to doing this on a highway that is a 55-mile plus highway. And now I'm sort of like, oh, there's 250, there's hard road. Again, shrink the world by bike. Someone should use that on a podcast. Yeah, this is very reminiscent of the Western Maryland Rail Trail in that it's wonderful that there's a paved surface. Love it. But the root intrusion is pretty substantial, and boy, that's a kidney shaker, that's a tooth rattler. And so I wonder if the efficacy of having a paved trail sometimes goes away. Oh, this is interesting. We've got paramedics just go around everyone. I think somebody might have called. There's a gentleman that may have appeared in distress. He is refusing assistance, but somebody must have called it in. Oh, so yeah, getting back to the paved trail here, or the paved path here. I wonder if there's a point where it's like people, and maybe I'm overthinking this, always a possibility, that people will use it less because the condition isn't as good. And you may be better off going with the kind of more classic towpath vibes. But then there are probably people that would never consider to go on a path like that. I also think that there's probably not as much use case on this route for bicycling. I think more people walk it. And if you're walking it, obviously, the route situation is not an issue. It is cooled off nicely. This is not nearly as cold as it was that day one, but yeah, it's pretty good. Yeah, it's amazing how many miles you can make quickly.
Did you see a guy on the path out there still?
Yeah, Penfield ambulance was with him.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
I called the ambulance for them.
It looked like he was refusing help, but
that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
When I went through this way, he was passed out in the brush.
Oh.
Honestly, I thought he was dead.
Oh boy.
So I called 911 immediately, and I was waiting to hear from them. But
Yeah, no, they're with him right now. He was up on his feet.
yeah.
He looked a little wobbly, but I think that may be what his deal is now. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Just as long as somebody's with him.
Yeah.
I want to keep hanging out here. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for calling ambulance for him. That's
Yeah,
you just never know, right?
It's weird. A couple of years ago, I was biking through Greece, and I saw somebody in a similar situation. I thought he was just taking a rest laying in the sun, and I found out 2 days later in the news that he had hypertension.
Oh wow.
So I was like, if it's that situation again,
You just
at least I'll call.
I think that's the right call. Yeah. Yeah. Well, nice day for biking at least.
Yeah.
Yeah. Take care. Have a good one. There's your story. Good Samaritans all around. That's funny. There was a sign that said, no pedestrians or bicycles, like right next to this path. Of course, they mean the road, the service road here to the left, not the bike path. The bike and pedestrian path. That's just a little, you can just do a little, hey, what? Still a very car-centric region here in the Rochester area, with notable exceptions. There's some really nice places to bike. There are some nice bike routes, but like in so many places, maybe where you're from too, it's bikes belong in a very particular place. They do not belong with cars. That is, I think, still the vibes around here. You drive your bike to a bike-related facility, and that is how you do it. So, again, lots of different ways to do things, but I am of the opinion bikes belong everywhere. Asterisk, except where they don't. Except where it's not safe. It is funny though, being on this, I've seen this bike path by vehicle for a long time. It's at grade with the highway here, and there's no separation whatsoever. None, zero. Grass medians and stuff, but it's just odd. Having been on similar paths in the DC area, in Northern Virginia in particular, where you're riding and there's barriers between you and the speedy highway-like road that is next to you. Interstate even, I'm thinking of the one I'm thinking. Often am impressed with how fast you can go by bike. And it's not like I'm going that much faster with the e-assist here. I don't know if this is the kind of place where you need to hit the crosswalk. I'm going to assume it is. You know how there's some crosswalks where it's mere suggestion. There are some crosswalks where it's basically for visually impaired folks. And then there are crosswalk buttons that actually you do need to hit it or it won't give you your little walkie guy. Oh, I have to say, brakes. Need to figure these brakes out. One thing that I have also noticed more on this trip with the e-bike is coasting feels better. What do I mean by that? When I've been riding it back in West Virginia, I think it's probably because I'm doing a lot of riding where there's a lot of hills, a lot of grades. And of course you coast down the grades, but there's very little riding a flat, you pedal, coast, which is what I'm used to on an acoustic bike in flat areas. And I found that with the e-assist, it felt like when you coasted, it almost felt like you were braking, which doesn't feel natural or right. And either I've gotten used to it, or I've probably gotten used to it. That's probably the answer right there. And what's great about that is, since that cadence is a more normal thing for me, it allows your legs just to have that moment of rest. And that's what I always find to be so tricky on rides where it feels like I'm always spinning, like I'm not getting that little glide rest. So that's good. I'm trying to think of examples where that happens. Feels like on the C&O at times. Oh, you know where this happens? On the Gap coming from Pittsburgh. And this is always we often get the questions, which direction should I go? And for the coming from Pittsburgh towards DC, prior to the big hill going down to Cumberland, so we're on the Pittsburgh side, you just don't get, because there's that little bit of a grade, that slight imperceptible grade, there's not a big opportunity to coast at all. And so that can be really fatiguing. You don't get that every few pedals of a glide, which I think really makes a big difference and is more natural for how most of us end up cycling. So in any event, I'm finding that to be a thing right here. Now this, I believe I have to do a little bit of a jog here because the trail, or the path I should say, it's not a trail. I guess, do people really care if it's a path or a trail? When I think path, I think the Hojack. I don't know. Anyways, I have to switch sides. It's on the south side of the highway here. And then I believe it will flip back again. And this is interesting because it's along some residences here. I've often wondered whether I would enjoy living on a path, a route. I think the answer is I have a route and a path near the cabin, but it is 7 miles away. I guess the thing I've wondered is, would I like being able to go out in my backyard and literally hop on the Erie Canal towpath or the C&O or something like that. These folks have the nice little path here, but they also have 104, which is probably the more impactful thing in their lives, just with the noise. Sun is still fully behind clouds, so it's just nice and cool out. I ended up drawing the long straw for this part of the ride. And so thinking back to what could have been, wouldn't have been because of all the things that we know, this would have been a pretty stellar way to end the trip, coming in from the Buffalo region by bike. I still don't know what I would have ended up doing if I would have taken the Erie Canal route or not, or taken Route 31. It parallels it so much, but being on asphalt is so much faster, or just measurably faster. I wonder if I would have done that just because I'd already done that part of the towpath before, just to mix things up, but also for the efficiencies involved. So I guess that's your answer. Yeah, but I think it also gets back to the notion of what is the future of me and this route. I think it's very clear, probably to all of you before me, that I really want to do this properly when possible. Is that a this year thing? I'm going to have to say it's unlikely, but you never know. But I also think the other thing that I learned is I think I like the idea of doing this in smaller, less aggressive chunks. And I think that I want to build up to those longer days. Even though I've got the second battery, I think that the enjoyment factor, I need to build up to that. But then ask me again next time I do an e-bike tour and I've got 100-mile days planned. Because I think I probably should do one. But what I may do now, rather than do it in the YOLO fashion of I'll do it in the middle of a long bike trip adventure, maybe that ends up being a single day adventure, and either as a loop potentially, or as a C&O gap kind of adventure. Clearly I've already done 70 plus miles. It would be trivial to make that 100 just to clear that barrier, but also maybe a shakedown ride of sorts that tests the range of the 2 battery setup, because I do think that's something that I would really like to have a better sense of, knowing that every single ride would be different. Even temperatures would impact. If I do it in a colder weather ride, that would impact the range of the batteries. So just out of curiosity, man, I have so much juice in this thing. I just keep wondering if the 2 battery setup might be more miles, you know what it would be, more flat miles than I would ever want to do in a day. That seems to be clear. But my idea also is, what if there's headwinds? How much does the extra weight on the bike impact the ability for me to go? All of those types of things. Just like that, we are at the end of the path here. And now I am making a turn onto a low shoulder road that points us north, back towards the lake and back towards the finale here of this circumnavigation. And I'm really glad that part 6 here, day 6, was a very compressed version of things. There was a loop involved. Lake Ontario was nearby. I started from the house and I'm ending at the house. So there's that. So maybe it's the trip in a microcosm, except minus all of the weird stuff that ended up happening, like immediately. But I'll have much more, of course, in the takeaway section as I kind of wrap things up here, because I've already even thought out loud some of the things that I'm taking away. But here in part 6, just knowing, yeah, this is a route that's got to happen at some point. maybe will be done in a little different way. Certainly can only be done when that ferry is running from the U.S. to Wolf Island. And if it's not, and worse if it doesn't come back, the dream of doing this is pretty gone unless I can arrange for some other portage from that part of the state into Canada. Because once you're in Canada, then you're all set. There was no situation that was a problem. Of course, the thing is, think about, what about going the other way around? Sure, you can do that. And yes, you can get to Wolf Island, but you can't get from Wolf Island to the States. It's a real impediment. The other opportunity is possibly finding another crossing that would be probably another full day of riding, I would think. And it takes you just way upstate for future research, because I just think that this was such a really cool opportunity and ride, and I'm bummed that I missed out on the things I didn't get to see as much as I was excited for the things I did see. I certainly think there's a lot to be covered in our takeaways episode, which will of course be next episode for you. But as I wrap up things here, I want to say I was disappointed when things started. I remain disappointed that couldn't do the ride the way I envisioned it, but I did get to ride. I got to ride in all of the cool places that I had envisioned, and got to revisit some places like Toronto and Niagara Falls, places I hadn't been to in a very long time, realizing I got to make a point of getting back. And to be able to do that all in the context of a bike adventure, the fact that I was still able to do that, I didn't have to convert it fully into I drive someplace and I only drive a place. I ended up getting to bike every single day and biked in some of the cooler places that are available in this region. An international trip as well. Nothing wrong with that. So, as I wrap things up here, thank you again for coming along and for suffering through my lengthy monologues, and they have been lengthy. But thanks so much for joining, and I look forward to revealing the next adventure for you, which literally, as you're listening to this, has already happened. And I'm excited for that one. And then for stuff that's coming up in the fall and beyond, because I think this year's got a lot of possibility wrapped up in it, and we're only just getting going. So thanks so much for joining. Statistics. Miles biked 10.2. Number of times the differences between towns and villages in New York was explained, 1, and that's hopefully enough. Conversations with Good Samaritans about unconscious people on bike paths, 1. Bicycle path route intrusions that could be classified as kidney shakers, 4. Battery anxiety level on a scale of 1 to 10, 0. Municipalities referenced, 4. Flats, 0. Thank you for joining. You can find Pedal Shift at pedalshift.net for more great bicycle touring content. You can hear the Pedal Shift project through Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast app. Opening music courtesy of Jason Kent off his self-titled album. The track is called America. Check out his band Sunfield's latest release, Mono Mono, wherever cool music is available.